Support for the Leadoff on WGLT and WGLT.org comes from the Central Illinois Regional Airport, where travelers are one stop away from world destinations. Connections on American Airlines to Chicago or to Dallas-Fort Worth are available daily. Close, convenient, CIRA. More at CIRA.com.
Police in Normal are looking for answers after an apparent murder-suicide. It's one of the things you need to know to start your day for Thursday, May 30th. I'm Ryan Denham, and this is WGLT's The Leadoff. Now let's lead off with the fatal shooting of a Unit 5 schoolteacher and an apparent murder-suicide at a Northeast Normal home. More from WGLT's Lauren Warnicki.
Police dispatched to the 3000 block of Red Jasper Street at approximately 2:30 Wednesday morning, responding to a report of gunfire. Police say Matthew Moore illegally entered Amy Moore's home and shot her multiple times before turning the gun on himself. They were discovered in the home by police. Matthew Moore was pronounced dead at the scene. Amy Moore was transported to a nearby hospital and later died. The Moores were engaged in a lengthy divorce proceeding beginning in 2022, including multiple orders of protection. Their divorce was finalized last week. Normal Police Chief Steve Petrilli called the incident a terrible tragedy.
I believe that there had been previous incidents at the home, nothing rising to this level.
Normal PD is investigating the case as a homicide. In March, Matthew Moore pled guilty to criminal damage of property, a Class 4 felony. He was sentenced to pay restitution and ordered probation, drug addiction treatment, and community service. Petrilli says Normal PD was not aware of suspicious behavior at the time of the murder.
There wasn't any type of pattern that was documented in police reports that I'm aware of at this point. There was obviously some previous reports of a domestic nature, nothing that I have seen at this point that showed physical abuse.
Amy Moore taught second grade at Grove Elementary and lived in the Eagles Landing neighborhood with her children, who have been placed with relatives. In a statement, Grove Principal Sarah Edwards says Amy Moore was a beloved teacher and gifted educator who impacted the lives of thousands of students. Unit 5 says the district will have counselors available for students, staff, and families. For The Leadoff, I'm Lauren Warnicki.
Here's some other stories we're following in the WGLT newsroom. A large crowd turned out for last night's WGLT Housing Solutions Forum. It included presentations by state and federal housing experts and a panel discussion with local stakeholders. You can watch a recap on WGLT's Facebook page. The Bloomington Bison hockey team confirms that one of its new team executives, Scott McElrath, also known as Scott Allen, was the person killed in Monday's dual SUV crash in rural McLean County. The University of Illinois will host a new National Center of Research on Railroads. Half of the $15 million startup cost will come from President Biden's 2021 infrastructure package. Other states and partner universities will take care of the rest. You can find more on these stories at WGLT.org. The Illinois General Assembly has passed a $53 billion spending plan for the new budget year in July. Democratic State Senator Dave Koehler says it was a difficult budget year because there are always more wants than there are resources. In this interview with WGLT's Charlie Schlenker, Koehler says all in all he thinks it came out about as well as it could, considering the trade-offs needed to achieve passage.
I serve on the Medicaid working group, and so there's a lot of healthcare issues that were not able to be addressed this year, but we did do a fair amount of them. So overall, I was pleased in that. For me personally, I really wanted to see some funding go towards student teacher stipends. I've met with the students and the faculty at ISU, which is predominantly the major teaching organization in Illinois. It's a real hardship for student teachers to have to travel and incur expenses just to be able to do their student teaching. So, but that was not to be. So we'll fight that another day. Representative Sharon Chung and I had a bill to help with the small farmers in terms of the farm estate tax. We had wanted to get through something that would give some relief so that families, once the main farmer dies, they don't have to sell the farm just to pay the taxes. That didn't happen. So, again, that's an issue that we're going to pursue later on.
How far did that really advance in the dialogue and the discourse? Is it likely to pass next session, or is there significant work yet to do among all the stakeholders?
Well, I think there's always still work to do, but I think we made an impact. We made an impression. I had numerous conversations with the governor's office in the final days of the Senate doing the budget. I was kind of hopeful that at one point we might be there, but again, there's a lot of issues on the table between the House and the Senate. That's really where the budget has to be passed before the governor gets it to sign. But we did a lot of education in that process, and I think now we come back on it next year, and we'll be that much further along. So I'm optimistic. I make no promises, but I think we just need to continue to press that issue. But, a budget is always kind of a mixed bag. There are some things that I was very happy about, like the child tax credit. And the money that we're putting into early childhood education and just education in general. That's something that is very important for this state. I would like to see the support for state universities and colleges to be upped. There was a 2% across the board that does not really keep up with inflation. ISU is, the bottom funded schools of all the state-supported universities. We need to change that. That's going to be a high priority for me next year.
There's been talk of a funding formula for universities, much as there is for K-12. Are the discussions on that closer to being ready for real legislation?
I think so. We had a briefing on that a couple of weeks ago about the funding formula for higher ed. I think it looks very promising. And I think that is going to be something that if we don't address in veto session, we will put on as a major item for next spring session. But it doesn't still help ISU. ISU needs to have its base level of funding upped. There's a number of us in the legislature, both Representative Chung and myself, who represent ISU, but also alumni who are in the legislature. We're going to try to see if we can't get that as a budget item for next year's budget.
So
yes.
What are you ecstatic about? What are the major wins for you?
Education funding is always a high priority, and we did a good job of that. We put a lot of money into evidence-based funding. We've, over the course of the last few years, when we first enacted evidence-based funding for K through 12, we've put now over $2 billion into the evidence-based funding formula. That's a big deal for schools that have really been struggling that are in economically depressed areas. I think we're starting to see the results of that we're seeing better graduation rates. We're seeing, higher grades overall. It makes a difference. The governor proposed a modest child tax program, but we increased that to $50 million this year and $100 million the next year. That's important for working families. The cost of raising a child in this high inflation times is just a real burden on working families, and so we've done something about that. The money for social service agencies, we continue to help. Those are the safety nets that all of our communities depend on. We also increased the pay wages for developmentally disabled and CCP workers, which are workers that care for our elderly. Those are folks that do the hardest work. I mean, they take care of seniors in their homes with everything from personal hygiene to cooking, and otherwise those folks would have to go to nursing homes, which is much more expensive. Those are some of the highlights that I think were really good about this budget.
Members of the Latino caucus have expressed dissatisfaction with the level of advancement that their constituents are getting. Members of the Black caucus are also likewise feeling like this was a mediocre budget for them. You've expressed some dissatisfaction. Was the tension between available resources and needs sufficiently high that permanent bruises in the negotiations happened, or is this just part and parcel of we got half a loaf?
No, I think relationships are fine. You represent your constituents in the best way possible. You fight for everything you can get for your districts. But in the end, we have great needs and we have limited means, and everybody understands that compromise is the name of the game.
Would you give a couple examples of wins in a bipartisan sense? I mean, often we hear Republican lawmakers saying that they were shut out of most of the discussion. What are some examples of bipartisan legislation that made it through?
There's a lot of individual things. For one, Representative Bill Howder initiated a bill in the House, and I picked it up in the Senate for not having pre-authorization when somebody comes in to the emergency room with a blood clotting or a blood disorder. You don't have time to wait for somebody to say, "Oh yeah, that's approved." So we eliminated pre-authorization for that. We're trying to make changes all the time that healthcare needs to take place between the physician and the patient, and we don't need third parties to be involved to try to manipulate the system. And usually what they do is they drag it out so that it frustrates both the patient and the providers. That's why the governor had a good bill, which was a bipartisan bill, to try to eliminate pre-authorization across the board. I just heard an example of one that we did last year, where we said that insurance companies cannot deny people cancer treatment with proton beam therapy. We have a new proton beam therapy center at the Cancer Center here at OSF. And I just yesterday ran into a woman who's undergoing cancer care, and she said, we were prepared to have a big fight with the insurance company, and because of the bill we passed, they said, okay, you're approved. And her cancer treatment was able to go on. I mean, those are the kind of stories that make you realize that what you are doing in Springfield does affect life and death situations with people. And we have to, always strive to try to do that in a bipartisan way, and we do. Healthcare is one of those areas where we have good bipartisan support.
That's State Senator Dave Koehler, a Democrat from Peoria who represents parts of Bloomington Normal. Koehler spoke with WGLT's Charlie Schlenker. Before we let you go, the town of Normal and the Old House Society will host the Historic Preservation Awards ceremony tonight at 5:30 at the Normal Theater. And that's it for today. I'm Ryan Denham. You can subscribe to the Leadoff on the NPR app or wherever you get your podcasts.